So welcome back. So we're in lecture 3-4, and in this lecture we're going to talk about type conversion and what type conversion is. Now, when we acquire data from the user as an input, that, as I think I've said it before when we talked about data types, we acquire data from keystrokes on the keyboard from the user. Those keystrokes are captured as a sequence of characters. They are then interpreted as a string of characters. If I want to treat them as anything other than a string of characters, I need to convert them from the string data type to whatever the other data type may be. So if the user input 0, I could convert that into a Boolean, which is false. If they typed in the word false with uppercase F, I can use the int function and convert that into a 0. Now, if I said int lowercase f ALSE, then things are going to get a little haywire. And I've got that notebook, the Module 3 notebook for you, and I want you to go through and go play with it. You know, it's a practice exercise. That's what that notebook is for you to practice. What happens if you say int lowercase FALSE? What if you said int and you passed it your first name? What would it come up with? Use these functions that we're building call it a toolbox of sorts of different functions as we move along. There's some functions that we've dealt with already. Print. I haven't dealt with the input one to acquire data from the user, but it's something that we will deal with. We're now dealing with typecasting and how to convert from one data type to another. Now, one of the things you're going to have to deal with in the next module is managing data and converting it from one data type to another. And why is this important? Well, if I asked you to ask the user to type in their age, and based on that age you had to determine how long they had until they were eligible for retirement. All right, if they entered in the number 25, 2 and a 5, and hit the enter key, that's 2 characters. Those 2 characters come in as a string. If you want to do mathematical operation and say the age of 65, that number, you could have a constant 65, subtract their input value from 65. Well, I can't subtract a string from a number, so I have to typecast or convert that value to a mathematical or a numeric value. Now, something else that we've got to understand, that if we're doing any division, we have any division whatsoever in our code, we need to use a floating point or a floating decimal point number data type as the result of that calculation. So anytime we do division, the result has to be a float. All right. Float is that decimal point that we talked about before. And if I said I want to convert this float of 98.6 to an integer, it's going to drop off the decimals. Convert 10 base 4, that's going to give us our 1.0 E4. That's going to give us 10,000. Convert 1.0 to a Boolean. It ignored any fractional anything because that's a floating point, and just looked at the one, typecast it to be a Boolean, which is true. The other is false. Things that you can go play with. Here's examples. Like I said, I've got that notebook for you to go explore different things. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? Okay. The more you practice with it, the better you're going to be with it. All right. So we've got to take into consideration the difference between numbers and characters, or a string of characters. So here's an example of what I'll call a string, or a string literal constant. In quotation marks, and it's a single quote, could have been double quotes. It's not going to be particular in Python. That's a string of characters that does not change. Every time we run this code, that will be the exact same statement or sequence of characters. Now, if I try to convert that into an integer, it's going to have a problem with that, and it will throw an error. And it says value error. That's a type of value error. If I try to convert nothing, and empty quotes is not really nothing, it's something. I try to convert it, I can't convert it because it is a string with no value that can be converted to a number. So there's a lot of things that can take place when we try to convert from string to integer, string to a float, string to a Boolean, Boolean to a float. Can we do that? Yeah, we can do that, but it'll end up being either 1.0 or 0.0. So like I said, keep track of what we've discussed. Go through and explore. Do some mathematical operations. Play with the print statement to check to see, is this what I think it is? Use the type statement to see what type of data is it after you've converted it. Okay. Play with these functions as we add them to our tool belt. All right. I'll see you in the next video.